Who are you?
Hi, welcome back. Rich Smoker here. How you holding up? We're holding up pretty well here. Other than, we really need more of a decoy fix. And you know what? You're in luck. We got some more coming. So right now we're going to get into some, as you can see, Back Bay, North Carolina and St. Lawrence River. St. Lawrence River is going to incorporate both sides of the fence, United States and Quebec and Ontario. So off we go. Let's do it. I'll admit right now, I have never been a big follower of St. Lawrence River decoys, other than I find them very rugged and very aesthetically pleasing. But other than that, we'll show you what we got. One guy who I do know a bit about is Ken Anger from Dunnville, Ontario, Canada. And you can see Ken Anger's decoys. He was heavily into doing a rasp bird. This is a redhead. At one time it's been repainted, and we've lost the color of the head, but it's really a neat bird. I mean, you can see how rugged it was. It's meant to take it. What I love the most about Anger's is his head and bill carving. I mean, he was a stickler when it came to carving the bill. The upper Coleman, he just, he didn't mess around. He knew what he was talking about when he was doing it. Another guy that I've met over the years on the bottom shelf was Ken Harris. Ken Harris was from Woodville, New York, and he made decoys commercially. And this is one of his black ducks, an original paint black duck, big, large, and it had to float well. Mostly they were made of balsa so that they would float well. He did a lot more work on some of his decoys than was really necessary, but he did a lot of gunning decoys, and he did a lot of decorative birds that he would sell to people for tourists and whatever. But you'll find a lot of St. Lawrence birds that are, I like to refer to them as the big ducks. The scaup, golden eyes, black ducks, redheads, and the birds that not so much on the line of teal, because they just didn't have a lot of teal, but they would certainly have these bigger birds that they could put down for the winter. They got the birds coming through on the St. Lawrence before we saw them here in the States, so they would kind of mess them up with decoys until they got down to us and they realized that what we were hunting with, and they didn't buy it. So that's one reason I don't like them. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's they have a different style altogether, especially when you run into a lot of the Quebec decoys. They cut a lot of feathers into them. They did a lot of rasp work, and they carved a lot of different things that really weren't needed for a hunting decoy. You didn't have to put feather lines on them or anything, but they aesthetically they pleased themselves, and I think that goes above and beyond when you're dealing with artistic interpretation. I think these people really enjoyed hunting with decoys and making them more so than anything. Let's switch over to some North Carolina birds. You'll find a lot of North Carolina birds were made as a battery. They're big, they're bold, and they maintain big, vibrant colors. Right here is an O'Neill redhead, and I think that epitomizes what we're talking about. There's no sense of blending any colors. It is what it is. There it is. It's a redhead. You put that out in the water with another 100 of those, and you know what they've got. You see a lot more redheads and geese, even some brant from North Carolina than you do most of anything. I like them. I like these big battery birds like that because they weren't making any promises to you. They weren't going to make any sweet little dainty green-winged teal. We're going to put birds out there that we can put out in the water, and they're going to stay there, and we're going to hunt them. They made a lot of canvas geese too, where they would use a center board and then it would be metal bars, wire, that would go over that center board, and they would be fastened down and make a frame, and it would be stretched canvas over top of it. But you find a lot of brant and geese from down there too, that came down the East Coast, and they would winter in the Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds. We've now come to a case that means a lot to me, and it is the lower Chesapeake and Virginia coast. I find these birds that I live with, really, and from Crisfield area, there's a lot of really interesting decoys in here. One of my favorites is right here, a Travis Ward, Lemon Steve Ward's father. He and the Sterlings more or less built the Crisfield style of a pinched chest and real wide hips to handle the waves, the short choppy waves of the lower sound, and big birds. They made large decoys that would be able to hunt with. They didn't make any compromises either. They were making decoys that they were going to hunt with. It wasn't going to be sitting on a shelf. They were going to make birds that they could hunt with, without a doubt. And, that Travis Ward morphed into the Ward brothers down here, the 36 style. We call it the 36 style. They were actually made all during the 30s. You can go anywhere from 34 through 38 and find that same style. Matter of fact, I have one in my collection that was a 1940s bluebill that was actually made on that 36 style pattern. So we give it the 1936 style, so it's a pretty neat looking bird though. I mean, it's a stylish and it's the epitome of canvasbacks, I think, off of Chesapeake. An interesting bird that I find really interesting too is the Bill and Chank Elliott. The Elliott brothers from Easton. They'd make birds and they put them together. I'll say that for them, and they painted them, and they were what they were supposed to be. They were like the battery birds of the Chesapeake, which is an interesting thing to see. They didn't mix around a whole lot of paint, and they didn't waste any paint. They put it on, and that's where it was. And if you didn't like it, well, that's your problem. But I got a kick out of them. Two bachelor brothers from Easton making decoys together, and they didn't kill each other. I know how it is when I'm dealing with my brother. Sometimes we won't go into that. Well, actually, we have a lot of fun. So I bet they had a blast too, without a doubt. One of the best ones from Dorchester County, Ed Phillips, this little bluebill drake here epitomizes his style. You cannot mix it at all. The Ed Phillips decoys are just phenomenal. The style, I mean, he kept them, whether he was doing redheads or bluebills, they were all pretty much the same shape, just different paint. And, the geese are outstanding, so you run into a lot of interesting birds that they've done. And there's no birds that you can't, how can you say, forget the Chincoteague birds, Ira Hudson. Ira Hudson, we have a scalp, and that retains some original paint, and one of the rarest ones to find are green-winged teal, which retains no paint. So I mean, we've got those. We have and it's conjecture. It depends on who you talk to. The Chincoteague style emanated from New Jersey decoys, from wealthy sports that came down the coast and came ashore and hunted there. They share a lot of style from the New Jersey, except Chincoteague is its own entity. They'll take something and they'll make it theirs. And it's evident with the bird right above it, the Dave Umbrella Watson, this black duck. That's just a phenomenal piece of work, how he cut in the wings. He always has an eyebrow above the eye. The black duck we have here doesn't have much paint on it, but you get to see the form. It's just a phenomenal form. Alongside it, you have a Miles Hancock in original paint. The canvasback is that's an outstanding bird. I must admit, when I first saw them, I really wasn't impressed, but I've really grown to love a lot of Miles Hancocks, and he's just had his own way of doing it. And whatever color, he reminded me of Lloyd Tyler. Whatever color he had on hand, that's the color we're using today. And you even run into some shorebirds. Charles Clark, he's probably best known for his shorebirds. With that yellow leg that we've got, that's a beaut. You're ready.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Here is probably one of the best pairs of birds we've got in the collection, epitomizing Chincoteague. A pair of Ira Hudson canvasbacks. Football, and they've got fluted tails. They're just outstanding. Now, they've been varnished, but paint on them is just outstanding, I think. They're just beautiful little birds. I can't imagine what they would look like on the water. With a rig of those, they would just be outstanding. With, being round bottom like that, they would do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that would be roll a little bit to flash water up to show that the birds are feeding or, sitting there resting. And so it would be kind of cool. Alongside of them, too, is Doug Jester. We have a pair of buffleheads that he did. And what's really, now these are an original paint. What's interesting is on the drake, the tail's blue. So again, hey, if they get close enough to see it's got a blue tail, they should be in the boat instead of flying around. So I think I love Doug Jester decoys too. I think they're just outstanding. But we get back into stuff that I really enjoy too. Lloyd Sterling and Noah Sterling. These are done a little bit more aesthetically, in as much as you can see the paint has been crazed on the back. They do that with stippling. They put white lead paint on it and stipple it with a sash brush, and then paint over top of it with the idea of refracting light so that it would not shine when it's on the water. And the Noah Sterling right alongside of it, bluebill there, epitomizes the Crisfield style. Narrow chest, real wide hips to ride the water, and stern heavy like that. So it make the bird float very well. And that's kind of like a Crisfield battery bird too. The size of it is just phenomenal. It's huge. And you'll still find them roaming around. But some of the best birds, I think, are some of our black carvers from Crisfield. We have Pied Jones, and him and his son Sherm would make decoys, and they would make them for Lloyd Tyler. Lloyd Tyler would then paint them and market them as his own. Back then, as much as I hate to say it, people wouldn't buy decoys from black carvers. They didn't want somebody making their decoys that wasn't the same persuasion as they were. And I think that's horrible. And this shows you right away that these guys knew what they were doing. With both that Pied Jones, and we have another Pied Jones up here, this bluebill. And that epitomizes also the Crisfield style. Narrow chest, wide hips, and look at the head on that thing. That's just phenomenal bird. Anybody that says these guys don't know what they're doing is crazy. They're just hard to find, because most of them were marketed through Lloyd Tyler. They did a lot of Sherm. I believe he was a taxi cab driver in Pocomoke. He would carve shorebirds when he wasn't driving people around and give them to Lloyd, and Lloyd would paint them and sell them as his own. Matter of fact, you know, they worked in the shop from stories that I've heard from Sherm, stories that I've heard. They would work in Lloyd's shop, and some people have come in and wondered what you know, this black fellow was doing in his shop, and Lloyd Tyler ran him out because he should have been run out. You know, it's just a horrible thing to hold race into making things with your hands, and it's an art form. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents. But then we have a Lloyd Tyler's here, by the way. Nice pair of pintails, and you can tell them right away. It was a efficiency in motion when he carved these birds. Whatever way they came out, they came out. He would chop them, paint them, and you know, you've got what you've got. And on the water, they looked like the real birds, without a doubt. And you know, there was efficiency in paint, efficiency in carving, so it wasn't a whole lot that really needed to be done to show off. He wasn't trying to make a mantelpiece or anything else. And the hen pintail that's there too is a little odd, being that you find it's all scratch painted. It didn't do a whole lot of that, where he painted the bird and it had a base coat, and then he scratched through it with a sharpened nail or a stick, that sort of thing. One of the neatest things, I think, is the Lloyd Sterling yellow-shafted flicker. Back when the flickers would move through this area, they would shoot them for food, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know what they tasted like. I can't imagine something that would eat ants and bugs and everything else would taste that great, but who knew? It's like anything else, you know, if you've got the opportunity, you take it. I know when they moved through the flickers, one morning in an hour when I was walking, I counted 533 flickers flew over my head in an hour. And I went back out in the afternoon and they were still flying. So I could see where they would you know, shoot flickers for the idea of putting food on the table. Really odd to find these things. Passenger pigeons by Joseph Condon from Aiken, Maryland, from up at the top end of the bay. It's really hard to imagine somebody actually making passenger pigeon decoys, but there's 3 of them. And we're lucky enough to have them here in this museum and on display.